So I start with the video, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Barbara Müller, and I'm the Exhibition Group Director of IoT India and Artificial India Expo. Respected speakers, eminent guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Messe München India, I welcome you all to Smart Cards Online Expo and the webinar session Artificial Intelligence for Catalyzing the Digital Transformation in Bfsi sector, the banking, finance, services, and insurance sector. Artificial intelligence has marked the beginning of the biggest technological revolution in all the industrial sectors. Globally, many banking and financial institutions are implementing AI to optimize the processes, reduce operational costs, and improve customer relationships. India is expected to become the fourth largest private wealth market by 2028, as per the reports, and the technological advancements in AI is certainly going to fuel this growth. We have some of the best known experts from the industry who would share their views on how AI can make this transformation happen. I would like to thank NASCOM Insights for supporting us to organize today's webinar and bringing the stakeholders together. I would also like to thank all our speakers and delegates for joining us for the webinar. Before I request the moderator to commence the session, I would encourage our delegates to visit the Smart Cards Online Expo, which is live and scheduled from November the 3rd to November the 5th. Thank you.
I'm really excited to learn that Messe München India is organizing the online version of the Smart Cards Expo and IoT India Expo. So let's reconnect and re-engage in this upcoming online edition. So block your calendars and see you soon.
I'm really excited to learn that Messe München is organizing the online version of Smart Card Expo and IoT India Expo. So block the dates for 3rd, 4th, 5th of November 2020. Thank you.
We are excited to participate at the digital version of Smart Card Expo in 2020. Online version of Smart Card Expo will have no geographical barrier to connecting with each other. Thank you.
Let us reconnect and re-engage at the upcoming online edition. So block your dates for 3rd, 4th and 5th of November 2020. Thank you.
I'm glad to invite you all at this online expo, which is starting from 3rd to 5th of November 2020. Block your dates, please be there. Let's meet, let's collaborate. Thank you.
Let us reconnect and re-engage at this online edition. So block your date for 3rd, 4th and 5th of November 2020. See you there.
We're really excited to be a part of this virtual event this time. We really hope to see you at our virtual booth at the Smart Card Expo 2020. Looking forward to see you all.
Manisa, over to you.
All right. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to everybody on this fantastic Wednesday, the 4th of November. I'm sure everybody who's on this webinar, it's probably one question to start with: who's going to win the US elections? All right. But I don't think that's the topic for us today. We have a very important topic, more than Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So we have the panel which is going to discuss about the AI for catalyzing the digital transformation in the BFSI sector. And we're going to be talking about a number of things, looking at analyzing the COVID impact in the BFSI sector and why the need for innovation. And how do you decode the AI transformation opportunities into the BFSI sector? And what does AI mean when we look at what's going to be in the forefront of contactless and virtual financial services? And what do you believe will be the right approach to AI adoption by BFSI companies? And how AI will redefine risk and compliance in BFSI. So for this day today, I'm joined by a very eminent panel of people. And I wouldn't have imagined that we would actually have such a very wide variety of experience all under one roof. And we're going to be having this exciting conversation for the next 1.5 to 2 hours. So first up, we have Mr. Golak Kumar Simli, who's the CTO of the Ministry of External Affairs. We have Abhijit Shah, the CTO of Nippon India Mutual Fund. We have Dr. Rima Aswani, who's an AI research specialist from NASSCOM. And I'm going to have Mr. Prasanna Lohar, who's the CIO, Chief Innovation Officer at the DCB Bank. I would like to first introduce the ladies first. So I'll begin with Dr. Rima. So Rima is an AI research specialist at NASSCOM, and she holds a PhD in computer science. And she's been working in the areas of AI, data analytics for over 7 years. So prior to joining NASSCOM, she was a research associate with IIT Delhi in the Department of Management Studies, and where she's worked on multiple research and consultancy projects in the AI and analytics space. And very recently, she's been published over 15 research papers in international academic journals and prestigious conferences. And one important thing about Dr. Rima, she likes to spend a lot of time with plants. She plays strategy board games, and I'm sure there is a lot of board games going on right now. And also she likes binge watching on Sci-Fi and thriller TV shows. Welcome, Dr. Rima.
Thank you so much, Mani, for the wonderful introduction. I'm super excited to be a part of this insightful panel discussion and look forward to interacting with all the panelists.
Thank you. Welcome. And I want to next introduce Sri Golak Kumar Simli, who is a CTO with the Ministry of External Affairs. Well, he is an award-winning technology leader whose contribution towards National E-Governance Plan of India, right from it started in 2006 to 2007. So he's got a long experience in this space, and his efforts to digital transformation within the public sectors have been very immense. He's written many articles on the use of ICT in government service delivery transformation and spoken at various national and international seminars on digital transformation. Indeed, a very, very apt topic, and I'm very glad to have Mr. Simli on the call. And because he has helped in steering and ensuring a lot of smooth delivery of passport services at the doorstep citizens of India. One of the most successful e-governance project. I'm sure with everybody experiencing this, we know now the man who's behind this innovation. So he's also been guiding and contributing the use of emerging technology in various public sectors. He has worked on cloud, big data, analytics, AI, and RPA. And he has architected and implemented cybersecurity and data information security framework for the enterprise and various government sectors. So currently he's a CTO with the Passport Seva program in the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Welcome, Mr. Simli.
Thank you, Mani, for a generous introduction. In fact, so we'll love to share our experience and have a very engaging discussion in the event. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And up next, we have Abhijit Shah, who is a CTO with the Nippon India Mutual Fund. I'm sure with all the elections going around now, I think he's going to be watching this with very, very big caution because of what's going to happen in the financial markets that's going to open shortly or is already open. So Abhijit has been in the industry for over 25 years and he's delivered large-scale digital transformation projects for global banks. So he's extensively worked on big data, API platforms, RPA, machine learning, self-healing systems, serverless architecture. He's also very passionate about applying innovative solutions that results in business value. And his work is obviously on the BFSI space, specifically on retail, SME, and corporate banking. So, I mean, some of the ones that I've really liked what he is saying here about himself is about the innovation and IP creation, which is a very core thing of what we're going to see in India at the moment, and consulting to various banks, developing channel strategies, business process consulting, machine learning, and he's obviously had a wide variety of experience in the banking and financial space. So, Abhijit, a warm welcome to the webinar.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And it's been a pleasant interaction with all the panelists so far. And I'm assuming this is going to be a great session for all of you guys. And we'll make it happen.
Thank you,
James.
All right, fantastic. So as with every gentleman and lady around here, so I will probably start with the lady to kind of give us a very brief start to the whole discussion here. So Rima, based on your research, obviously from NASSCOM Insights, we know the amount of data that you've been working with, and obviously specifically on the BFSI space. So if I just want to kind of bring your thoughts, the first, what are some of the big challenges that you see for the BFSI sector overall, in fact, what of pre-COVID and what has COVID has happened? And where do you think the AI can play a role in this specific space?
Yeah. So thanks, Mani. So what we at NASSCOM Research recently did was we did an extensive research exercise with EY to build extensive AI playbooks. And these playbooks were for primarily 4 key sectors: retail, healthcare, BFSI, which is our focus area, and agriculture. And we've already launched the first 3 playbooks and we'll be launching the agri one soon. And what the idea behind doing these playbooks was to actually assist enterprises in identifying AI opportunities across the value chain, and thereby providing them with the requisite ammunition to accelerate their journey to become intelligent enterprises. And what we got to know when we started working on our BFSI playbook, that the banking and insurance sector has emerged as one of the top sectors, and it is expected to contribute about 60 to 65 billion of the total 500 billion that we are expecting data and AI to add to our GDP by 2025. We recently did a McKinsey report that got us to that insight, and the sector has been one of the early adopters of analytics and business intelligence. It has demonstrated several data-driven decision making over the past few years, and thus has a huge potential. So, but to get to that potential, we first need to actually identify what are the key challenges in the sector, and these challenges could be across the value chain of the sector. And considering our BFSI sector is a very diverse sector, which has banking, financial services, insurance. So to make things simple and to generalize the value chain, we focused on 4 key areas, which is sales and marketing, customer management, core transactions, and risk and compliance. And that is how we've actually segregated the challenges as well. So if we talk about sales and marketing, and these are just some few thoughts in terms of what the challenges could be, and there are many more, I'm sure. So in sales and marketing, we usually don't have a single view of the customer. We don't know what all the customer is doing and what all can we provide to the customer. And there is an increasing marketing spend to acquire customers nowadays. So some of the AI solutions that can help in that area are omni-channel marketing, where we can store and analyze large amount of data in an integrated manner to provide a single source and get AI-driven insights. Additionally, we can also do predictive prospecting, where we can target prospects using data, generating insights, creating customer profiles, and actually delivering on those. When we come to the second value chain segment of, let's say, customer management, there is a high pressure to improve customer experience, and that's across banking, insurance, both of these. And there's also lack of customers' trust at some point in time. There is low financial literacy. A lot of the customers do not have the right uh, right financial information to actually invest in the right place when it comes to financial markets. And of course, COVID-19 has impacted customer management in a big way, with the reduction in terms of the workforce and broken supply chains and all of those. And that is where AI can again help a lot. There are virtual assistants, chatbots that can provide contextual knowledge of customers, providing responses based on their past transactions. And I see that as one of the biggest area where AI has been implemented.
Okay.
In terms of personalized financial recommendations as well. So yeah, those are some of the areas. Similarly for core transactions and risk and compliance as well, we have many challenges and use cases.
Fantastic. So you mentioned a very interesting point. So maybe I'll touch upon that.
Yeah.
Ask Mr. Simli. So obviously the customer experience, as you pointed out, and obviously that's got to do a lot with the how do you in terms of enhancing the financial intelligence. So Mr. Simli, if I were to ask you, based on what Dr. Rima just said now, how do you see this enhancing the financial intelligence through AI? What are your thoughts on this? Because I think it's very important that because of the financial intelligence, you can then enhance customer experience. So I'm just trying to drop on that topic.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. James. Once again, let me at the outset also thanks Messi and Munson leadership team and the Smart Cards Expo, all the delegates and partners who has brought in this event. Very useful event, very kind of a futuristic and visionary event. Now coming back to the topic, how do we strengthen the financial intelligence side of it, financial inclusion side of it, using AI. And the third thing in government and public sector, we say financial empowerment, right? So these three aspects, if you look into not only AI, James, I per se see AI is one of the component when we talk about all the emerging technologies together holistically, right? And AI definitely is one of the major component, but then AI alone will not help. AI needs a lot of data. It's a data hungry kind of a technology. So we had to work holistically in terms of when we are trying to extract more of AI side of it, especially on the business operation. If I look into the financial sector, improving their business operation, improving the customer experience. For an example, let me give you an example here. Saying that today, let's say you are doing some financial transactions, right? You are paying some fee. For an example, you are paying passport fee or for the sake of any fee, any kind of a financial transaction. And where naturally banks are coming into picture, financial sectors are coming into picture, banking gateways are coming into picture. Suddenly, due to some technical reason, let's say that the payment is not successful, right? And you are in a jittery saying that what has happened to my payment? And from the other side, have you ever got a call from a call center from a banking sector or financial sector saying that, hey, your financial transaction has failed and we'll come back to you? Have you ever received that kind of a call? No. Why is that no? We can definitely do this using potential of AI. Kind of a proactive and responsive response. What I am actually doing now using AI, suppose you have any issue during the submission of my passport application or processing of passport application or post facto after submission of passport application. Now citizen don't have to follow me. I have to follow the citizen, and that's what I have done. I have turned around 360 degree. Why is that citizen should start following me? Why can't I start following the citizens? right? And these are the potential of AI I see, where banking industry can use heavily. The second area where BFI sector can see the potential use of AI is reducing the financial frauds. There are various kind of frauds happening every day. We are getting into this kind of a newspaper or social media saying that there is a ATM withdrawal happens, and that person who has withdrawn the money is not me. Or suddenly you see that there is a no transaction on the portal which is a mischief transaction which has happened, right? Now these kind of financial fraud, the potential of AI, you can no do this in terms of actually finding out the pattern of transactions happened in this particular ATM over the whole day, right? And without even customer informing you, you yourself can find out that this is the transaction which has gone wrong in the ATM withdrawal, or this is the transaction which has gone wrong into the portal, right? Or these many transactions which doesn't seem say a normal transaction. This is out of the pattern, right? So these kind of financial fraud you can definitely reduce. The second very important, we can see the aspect of AI on the BFI sector, which I personally feel the kind of a two wrong people collaborating together and trying to do some mischief on the banking system, right? If that is the case, for an example, I give another example because these are the practical thing we are using AI here. Now, for an example, suppose one of my granting officers, I know that this particular granting officer grants almost 150 to 250 application per day. Suddenly, I see that this particular granting officer has granted 300 applications today. How is that is possible? The efficiency, the response of the application is not such that no, he will grant 300 application per day. The process and procedure the person has to follow to grant an application, this will not allow to grant an application less than a minute, right? That doesn't allow. So how is that he is doing? How is he reached that 300 applications per day? So similar is the case with the banking sector. If a officer at the counter sitting and dealing with the customer doing some kind of a out of the scene behavioral pattern on the transactions, or the workflow he is working, or the application he is working, I can put the AI engine there and then find out saying that no, there is something wrong. I need to investigate more into this transaction. There is something wrong. And this is what I am actually doing now. The another example I can give, James, saying that suppose when I grant a passport, I run a background check on the database. And when I say background check means how many passport you have taken before, is that while you have taken last 3 passport, is that your particulars in the database, your pattern in the database is all correct, right? And suddenly I find that there is a applicant who has a regular kind of a history sitter who is trying to mislead the system and the processes. And suddenly today I find that one of my granting officer has successfully granted that particular applicant. I must get a alert saying that how come suddenly this applicant has become a good applicant when the history in the background database is all bad. How come suddenly he has become good? So I must get a alert based on my AI engine and other analytics engine, which I have developed as part of the application, right? So, but these things to give a shape, whether it is a fraud, whether it is a customer operation, whether it is a customer engagement, whether it is a customer insight, whether it is a financial inclusion, whether it is a customer experience, it is only possible, James, provided you take a holistic approach. When I say holistic approach, let me take four things. When I say 4 things, I typically tell them 4W. And the first W is I must know my workload. What kind of workload I am dealing? If you understand that well, then you can define your AI and analytics engine well, right? The second W is I call them workforce. Do I understand my workforce well? When I'm using the analytic engine, do I understand my workforce? And when I say workforce, it is holistically. It is my own employees. It is my stakeholders, it is my system integrator, it is my service provider, and citizen at the top, or a customer at the top. So do I understand my workforce well, right? So second W is workforce. The third W is, I call them workflow. And workflow is nothing but the kind of application I am dealing. Whether it is an enterprise application, it is an app, it is a mobile app. And when I say workflow, along with workspace, what kind of workspace I have given as part of digital kind of enablement, right? So that third W is very important. That is, I call workflow. I mean, right from conceptualization and design of the application, architecture of the application, security concerns of the application. Do I actually understand how is that my application is behaving? Whether it is an enterprise application, whether it is a mobile app, whether it is any kind of apps, multiple apps, right? That is the third W I say. And the last W I must understand if I am trying to define and stack this kind of a AI and analytics insights of it, that I call website. And website is nothing but your context and content. I must understand my context and content, dealing with whether with my internal stakeholder, employees, organization at large, external stakeholders, or society at large. When I say society at large, means customers or citizens at large. So that's how one has to take a holistic approach. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So from the research to a practical application in passport, I'm going to go into the real world of finance. Now, Abhijit, so I think all this kind of centers around more on customer experience. And I know based on your experience and kind of your focus on the customer experience, I mean, how would you see that AI is going to change the world for customers who are actually the customer experience part of it?
Sorry, thanks, James. And I think a very interesting point Golok made. Thanks to Golok as well. Before I get into the customer experience, since Golok brought a very important point of the fraud, I think I would certainly like to kind of touch upon that and kind of slightly deep dive into it, because I think that's one of the very interesting thing I like. I mean, AI driven fraud detection. So, and that is something which I'd worked on in my past. So just to trying to put some statistics around it. I mean, if you look at all the claims, there were around 1% of global illicit financial flows which were frozen and seized. This was, I'm talking about this data in the US market. And up to 5% of global GDP, which is around $5 trillion annually, is about money laundering transactions. And there are fraudulent claims which account for 80 to 100 billion annually, and this is alone in the US. I mean, I'm just talking of the US data as of now. This is the kind of magnitude of the money involved in the fraud that happens out here. And if you really look at it, what are the key things that happens in it? One is, I would like to kind of dissect these online frauds. I mean, the pre-transaction fraud, and there is a post-transaction scenario fraud, and then there are certain things which is beyond pre and post. I mean, which is beyond transaction. So it goes at a network level, and then there is something which is happening. Or some worm that is kind of entering the system, and it gets into your network, gets into the admin level, try to get the control of admin passwords, and then kind of hops onto servers from one server to another. Finally, it reaches the main server, and then it's able to kind of control that to its play. I mean, that is how one of the fraud that Mr. Golok mentioned about the ATM, where the actual worm was sent via some email, and this was a phishing mail that came across to one of the employee, who clicked on this mail, and he ran that the spurious mail, the content around it, the exe that ran, and the worm spread across. Finally, the worm, the malware, was able to get onto the switch of the ATM, And then apparently what happens is now the customers, now this is all a kind of a collaborated effort. It's not one single person playing this role. There are uh, uh, people who are actually having duplicate cards. There are people who are actually spread across various locations in the globe. Moment they get a signal that the the switch of the ATM is compromised, these people start doing the transactions, and the switch, the malware on the switch is not going into the core system for permission to dispense the money. So any request to dispense the money that comes to this switch is being approved by the malware itself. So look at the magnitude of this attack. I mean, and now even the actual customer who has actually gone to pull out his money there, they were in a situation where they got the money, but the money was not deducted from their account. I mean, so it was kind of raining. Money was raining because, and this was the effect of this malware sitting on this switch. Now, so no, this is the kind of a pattern which happens in the network. Now there are multiple AI driven tools which are actually doing the pattern analysis. So when I say pattern analysis, it is more to do with the traffic analysis from one node of the network to another node of the network. So there are multiple nodes, thousands of nodes in a network, and there is a pattern set between one node and another node for a time in a day, in a week. So you have some specific patterns identified between each nodes. And moment you kind of you are in a position to build these patterns across entire of your network, and you create that baseline of patterns, and then you kind of keep on monitoring. So typically in one of our implementations, we had deployed agents onto all these important nodes in the network, and these agents were continuously digging the data and putting it to the so these are all AI intelligent agents. So they are digging the data, putting it to the central server, and there is a central AI engine which is actually looking at all these patterns to identify the anomaly. So that was very interesting. And if you really look at it, the moment there is an anti-pattern that is being identified by the engine, it flags an alert, and it will flag an alert to the owner of that system, to the admin person who is the administrator of the system. And if there is no response from these people, it might actually go and bring down the server, that is for some time, and then people will get the alerts, and then they will come back to action to take the corrective action on these servers. So I think this is just one example which I depicted with regards to the network, and there are multiple use cases. Now coming back to the pre-transaction phase, there are multiple things which are happening in the pre-transaction phase where the users, when they kind of get into the system, that is the point where you try to block the user. I mean, you try to identify the credential of the user, uh, you try to do the biometric analysis of the user, you try to identify the pattern in which he's typing his password. So James, you might know my password, for example, and you know my user ID, and and you try to kind of get onto my system, okay? And if I have deployed some adaptive mechanism or adaptive authentication mechanism, the system will be in a position to learn that this is not Abhijit, because Abhijit does not type in this particular speed. So my pattern in which I type my password, even that gets recorded. My mouse movements, the way when I do my transaction and the way the mouse is being moved, even the mouse movement has a specific pattern for every individual. So even that gets tracked. And that is the way the post transaction, so sorry, the pre-transaction scenario, yeah, can be avoided. And if at all the system finds there is a kind of a problem, it detects that there is a situation which I am not very comfortable with, it will throw up a second level of authentication. So the authentication is basically what you know, what you have, and what you are, right? So there are three types. So if it is able to kind of crack that what you know, it's all about your password, then probably it will go into what you have. So what you have can be more like a biometric, or it can be a device on which it will send an OTP. So it gets to that level of detail where you kind of send a second hurdle for that individual to really ensure that he's the same person who he claims to be. And now coming to the post-transaction scenarios. Now, in a scenario where the transaction is about to happen, and when the transaction might have already happened, there are two variants in this one. Now, there are multiple things with regards to the volume pattern for that individual. I mean, he might be doing transactions, maybe he's doing a 10,000 rupees transaction in a day, up to 15,000 transaction in a day, or maybe 20,000. That is a range of the volume that in which this particular person is doing his transaction. And all of a sudden you see a spike of transactions happening in the range of 50,000, 60,000. Apart from that, there is a location in which this person is typically doing the transactions. All of a sudden you try to understand this, the pattern of the location is changed. He's not doing the transactions from Mumbai, but he's doing from some other area. And then there is the PIN number. There are so many other parameters that can be really looked at when there is a post transaction or during the transaction. And the moment you try to kind of get to know about a kind of anomaly in this pattern, immediately you can throw up a second level of authentication again while the transaction is actually happening. And then you can actually stop the transaction from happening. Apart from that, I mean, I might be going into a detail, but I mean, I'd just like to highlight that there is a new technique of, and I think Rima will also kind of second me on that, with regards to correlation theory of calls in telecom domain. So how one person makes a call to another person, the another person makes a call to the third person, and all of a sudden there is a call to an unknown number, or there is an incoming call from an unknown number before an incident happens. So there's a correlation theory which based on which you can create models, and these models are intelligent enough to kind of tell you how exactly or is there a chance of a fraud happening based on this correlation pattern. I think now I come to your question. Sorry, I digressed a lot, and I would put the blame on Mr. Kolak to kind of make me digress onto that topic. So now coming to your question of customer experience, I think it's a very important point at this point in time where the kind of veneer that we have with regards to customers are completely changing. I mean, it's we are getting the millennial customers now, and the kind of expectations that they have is completely different than maybe you and me would have. I mean, we have seen the decades, at least 2 decades of now, how the digitization have been. And the current junior, which are in teens, they are just looking at things where they're expecting the speed to be the paramount. I mean, they want right now. Everything is right now. I mean, and it's expected that they get the recommendations based on their expectations. I mean, they don't even want to wait for searching things. I mean, they would. So apparently, what is happening is defining the segment of one has become the priority of all the organizations. When I say customer segment of one, I precisely know what that one customer needs at that point in time in that particular context. So I've used a lot of words here. At that point in time, in that specific context, because the context may be he's in specific state in India, he might be in specific location in the world. There is a specific event happening in that particular location. Maybe there is a festival in that particular, maybe South India. There might be a specific festival which is not happening in North, but it's happening in South. Then there is a specific personal event of that person. It's his anniversary, or it might be his birthday, or his son's birthday, or whatever. So many dimensions to form a context of a customer. Now, the moment, so all this data, it's not available right upfront with any organization. I mean, there is a lot of data that comes from outside. There is a lot of data which is available by virtue of the transactions that this person might be doing with the organization. So the transaction data is very easy to get, but the data that is coming from outside, it's all in the social media. And there needs to be the real time feeds coming from the social media, which are captured at right point in time, and then passed on to the central system, who's actually trying to create the context for a customer. Now, if you really ask me, uh, forming the real time profile of a customer, whatever I told you right now is the real time profile of a customer. There are many organizations who are just experimenting with getting into the real time customer profile. None of them have really reached to that level, but even then, the experimentations is really about at least getting the near real time view of what the customer is doing. The moment I get the near real time view of what the context about a customer, that is the time when I will be able to make a choice that what is the right product for this person to be offered. And of course, I might have a basket of offers, offer basket in my side, and I might want to do a matching of which offer suits the best for that particular customer at that point in time with that particular context. And then I make an offer to him. And I think while we do all of this is just an offer level, but and of course this is not the complete experience. The experience would be when this person actually comes and accepts the offer, and I let him do the transaction in the complete secure manner. So if you really ask me, the experience would be right from understanding the customer, analyzing his needs, his current context, making the right offer to him, and then taking him through the journey of buying whatever I want him to buy in a more secured manner. So I would like to kind of stop because I've been kind of talking a lot.
Yeah, but it's got quite valid points that you mentioned, Abhijit. I think I like those elements of security that you talked about. How I'm surprised that I'm not surprised. I was a little bit. I learned a new thing that you could actually predict a lot of these things, and you can actually do good things about customer experience pre and post. So I think it's fantastic. And we have got our fourth member, Prasanna, who's just joined us. Thank you, Prasanna, for making the time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Prasanna is the Chief Innovation Officer at the DCB Bank. And I'm sure he's a very busy man. He's one of the top 50 CIOs. And he's working with various innovation, fintech, and blockchain forums in India at the moment. And as part of DCB's digital and architecture transformation, he's closely associated with the new and latest technology strategy, assimilation, experimentation, and innovative customer servicing and engagement. So he's worked as a digital bank head and is also part of the various deliveries like India's first Aadhaar and biometric enabled ATM, paperless account opening, Zippy, India's first omni-channel framework for bank, KYC, blockchain, mobile banking and mobile apps, open banking and internet banking initiatives. Also on UPI, Bharat Bill payments, API management, blockchain switch and cards relevant initiatives. Wow, Prasanna, I think you have done a lot in that, what I can just have just read about you. Maybe just to fill you in with what we've just discussed, Rima started to talk about the whole world of how COVID has made AI more relevant in the BFSI sector. Mr. Golak talked about the fraud in the intelligence, financial intelligence part. And we had Abhijit who took on that part, explained about intelligence, but also gave a little bit more flavor about the customer experience part. So maybe I'll probably bring in here in that part of what do you see are some of the big challenges that AI is currently tackling and some innovations from your perspective that's in the BFSI sector at the moment.
So thanks, Mani, and for the and thanks Smart Card Expo for inviting me here for this talk. And I think I heard views from Abhijit. So I was working closely with Abhijit last couple of years. So we have that synergy of understanding the technology and so on. So coming back, so very good topic, right? AI and how really AI is gonna change the world. Typically in banking, what's happening, and I think you beautifully narrated how other people have given the inputs. So I think so far what we have seen is a traditional core banking wherein we operated, where our customer used to visit branches or say typically in the last 10 years, customer is now more adopting on internet banking, mobile banking. So that's how the journey of customer so far towards banking. So now when there are a lot of competitions are coming in our life, right? So today we are sitting on a more than 2 crores of 2 billion transactions in October on UPI, and most of these transactions happen from a non-banking platform, say on Google Pay or Phone Pay or so on. What do we do as a bank, right, for a same customer who is there on the non-banking platforms doing this financial transactions? So or what do we do for a same customer who is getting non-financial service like Zomato or Book My Show and so on? And typically 1 or 2 times he comes to our internet banking, mobile banking to do some of the financial transactions. So it is very important for us to understand customer, and if we have to do in a traditional way by calling customer or to sending SMSs or emails and understanding his data and meet him face to face, it will take a lot of time for banks to understand that. So we need some another mechanism to understand the customer in intelligent basis. That's how we will go for a technology like AI to understand, or a big data to understand his transactional patterns and give back him a notification based upon his interest, based upon his way of saving, and based upon his aspiration financial goals. So that becomes very important for banks to really practice and implement it in a 2020. Now coming back, what we have seen on branches or so it's a typically one direction channel. So why we need this bi-direction channel? Because if some customer is doing some 50,000 transaction, immediately I need to give a notification, sir, you wanted to save 70,000 rupees a month this month, but if you are doing this transaction this month, I think you will not be able to save. And if you have to save again, you will have to do this much in the next 6 months. So that gives more comfort to the customer, which is possible for a contact center guy or a branch guy, but it's all physical efforts, right? It takes a lot of time, lot of efforts. And so just imagine this customer experience coming seamlessly for a customer who is sitting at home doing transaction mobile, and immediately somebody comes as a pop-up and say, I think this is another way to do this. So like that we can identify many more use cases for our customers. Now, post-pandemic, it is not only external customer, but we need to see how I can utilize my internal customer, right? So, if my internal customer, who is my field officer, who was visiting earlier on a field and now he is not visiting, right? So, how do we improve his performance? How do I say that if we are going on a field tomorrow and Prasanna is doing some 17 leads out of his 20 calls, so another guy who is doing only 7 leads out of this 20 calls. So how do I compare this performance, right? I can take out an Excel, map out who is doing what, how many calls, and then I give back calls. So instead of that, AI comes in picture and tells another guy, if you perform next 5 calls as per Prasanna, then you are able to reach that performance. So like that, even for your internal customer, like your staff officer, how do we improvise their performance on the field? That's very, very important aspect. So we at DCB are practicing this kind of digital initiatives. How do we improvise the performance of a branch officer or a performance of somebody roaming on the field for a bank to sell some of the products? So that's another thing. Another thing, like how do we improvise? Again, post pandemic, we as a bank or organization or at a country level also, we are seeing that we should optimize our operations. We should work very smartly. We should implement AI, blockchain. These are our aspirations. Like Pantapradan said in one of the Atmanirbhar campaign, we should have a smart supply chains. So now coming back in a bank, so I am sitting on huge overheads, cost overheads. And what I have done in last 6-7 months, I think we have to really go on to the next level so that I can fill this gap of loss of some cost or and so many other things. So how do I do that? So I have to adopt right technologies, right platforms, or the right business models so that I can cover up these losses. One of the most so, but it's not a ethical and it's not really long-term way of optimization. So what we can look at, can we optimize some of the tasks, repetitive tasks, with the help of AI-based intelligent automation or a robotic process automation? Like my branch of like my suppose operation staff come to the comes onto his PC on a daily basis and picking up some of the files from various folders and doing that reconciliation on a daily basis, right? It takes 3 to 4 hours for him. So if I do the same job with AI, I do not need that manpower. I can use that manpower some skilled work. I can reskill that guy, and that way I can save so many man hours for bank. And if I go on identifying. I can easily identify 300 plus use cases in my back office, which can be automated to the next level.
Sure.
So every bank is on that job. Say example, video KYC, like we might be among top 5 banks to implement video KYC in no time in the month of July. So what does it mean? Like if when my customer is doing journey of eKYC, which is partial KYC on some of the products like account opening or fixed deposit account opening, so we need to complete his full KYC. So today my branch officer cannot visit him, cannot get his full KYC documents or PAN cards or so what we have to do. So video KYC is came to our life on a right time, maybe in October, November from RBI, and since then we started our journey to really implement this, and it was available to the customers on time. So customer completes his partial KYC journey immediately in the next 10 minutes. He completes his 5 to 6,000 rupees. Depends upon what type of product we are selling to the customer to complete its end-to-end process, filling up the form till data comes into your core banking or a lending system, saving so much of cost, right? So that's again video KYC, which is based upon a AI. Like at the end of the day, concurrent auditor, he has to go through all the video KYC. Instead of that, he can just run an algorithm and say, okay, these are the peculiar exceptions. I just need to take care with the help of my eye. And these are the easy cases. I just have to select out and say, okay. So that again comes with the kind of automation. Like that, I think at a bank level today, as Abhijit also said about millennial customers, right? And it's very important for us to reach back to the customer who has just kept a trail on a website or just a trail on internet banking while doing transaction. He has completed incomplete journey. How do I reach back immediately through contact center the way Amazon does on some dash button? So
Yeah.
right. So I think that cross industry innovation has to come in banking. So we have to adapt. So now AI is will become a bit traditional technology or a normal technology in couple of years. But AI is not a whole soul, right? As we look at how consumer is moving. Consumer today is very well aware of mobility or internet, or maybe tomorrow he will be aware of augmented reality, virtual reality, so on. So I would say when our service providers will be more on cloud. Today most of our core service providers are not on cloud. So that is why I'm not going for a cloud based core banking or cloud based any of the software. Exceptions are like big data AI journey people are doing on cloud. But when more and more fintechs and tech companies from where I'm buying these products will go on a cloud, predominantly regulation will also support and come up with some guideline to how do we go on the cloud. When banks will be on the cloud, and the banks and as an ecosystem will enter into the 5G kind of ecosystem. So just imagine today your consumer was today your human being was your customer. Tomorrow your IoT devices, tomorrow your refrigerator, tomorrow your car, or any of those gadgets will be your customer.
Right.
So that's another next level challenge banks will have to really see while they are providing conversational banking or some banking support from your devices, or to do fast checkout at a McDonald's with a payment, or a fast checkout at toll tag which is already available, or a fast checkout at a restaurants with the help of some beacons, give some notification when customer is entering in a bank branch, right? So when 5G will come into picture, you will not imagine the type of use cases will come up. Today we are very happy with the Zomatos or Book My Shows and some kind of a mobile-based use cases, but these use cases will control by mobile, but will be available on your IoT devices, right? I am entering a bank branch and I know that Miss Arnab has entered, right? Arnab has entered in the branch, and as a branch manager, I go and greet him, Mr. Arnab, how can I help you? So Arnab feels so happy, right? So like somebody is coming, and now look at this beauty. I based upon Arnab consent on mobile, I give him another. Mr. Arnab, you were looking for some real estate property on last Sunday, and I have selected some options for you. Arnab's level of understanding or customer expectation goes beyond that. Enter or job of that branch guy to ask what you are looking, that has been reduced. Today I must be getting so many calls from this Bajaj Finser or so many, right? So Just imagine the call comes to me based upon my need. Today, one of my relative is ill, and immediately calls comes from a bank. Sir, we understand these things, and this is something for you. So like this, na, like we are moving as a bank from a paperless to the advanced digital to zero touch banking. Enter in a bank branch, everybody knows, and moreover, based upon my facial expression, my branch manager understands that with the computer vision technologies whether Prasanna is happy or unhappy. And while coming out of the branch, right, a trigger will go to my head office who heads that retail branch banking. So 10 customers entered in this branch and they entered with an unhappy face and come out with a happy face. Immediately call goes, Mr. So you have done very good job today. So I think it's a limitless options are available with the AI coming in or computer vision based computer picture. What we are talking today is how to really get traditional banking to the next level banking. But look at 5 years down the line, right? When there will be huge competition. Today, Geo is trying to do a lot of collaboration, right? That's another game. Today we are doing one-on-one banking with the same customer. The same customer is doing banking with the 6 other banks. It takes a lot of efforts, right? And that customer is expecting everything should be there in one phone or one application. So that game change will happen with a neo banking or a challenger banking into come picture, right? So they will talk to the relevant banks APIs. Now these SME customer will choose whether I want to do banking with ICICI Bank or a DCB Bank. And moreover, this DCB Bank will come to know whether the statistics of this guy, accounting or expenditure, whether it is aligned with his expectation. If not, the call will go back and say, are you in need of some loan or lending? Or instead of that, you say, if you take this much loan based upon your last 3 years of books size, I think you will be able to perform more better. So this PFM, which was part of a personal finance management, there will be rise of BFM also, which is a business finance management for SMEs. So SME is a one area which is overlooked. And I think in the last 3 to 4 months, if you do a study, every bank is looking at how to onboard SMEs, more and more better SMEs, right? ICICI Bank, say, or even our bank, or so more inclination is toward SMEs. And even government of India looks at and pumping a lot of money for SME relevant things. When government does anything wrong in the country, banks should look at how I can collaborate in that journey. Government is doing on Atmanirbhar, how I can be participating. Government says supply chain should be there, how I can participate with a proper invoice discounting or a JAM or something like that. That's how banks have adopted so far. So journey here onwards very beautiful when collaborations will happen, right? Say example, Geo is collaborating with the Google or Microsoft or some of the tech giant, Facebooks and so on. So Geo automatically have set of customers, SMEs all together with them. What banks will do it, right? So bank also look at how they can collaborate with the Googles or Geos or something so that they be part of that journey. Or regulator has to come in a picture and say ki if this whole industry has to be regulated so that only Geo should not get benefit out of it, but how everybody should get benefit out of it. So where the collaboration, that picture is driven by something like open banking or open data, right? So there here onwards, like account aggregator is, they are going to try to go live in October, November, or maybe it will take some more time. But account aggregator, like IndusInd has went live, right? So account aggregator will bring on standardization of APIs, standardization how to use data. I think days are not so far. We will not be worried about data security, although it's a game between hackers or a security service provider, but still we'll have a robust data security. Why I'm talking, because when we talk about AI or tomorrow IoT or blockchain comes in between and secures IoT with the help of AI, or more and more application will go from web to the web 3.0. So security will be important aspect. And bank is not bothered about password, right? Today I say a lot of my password is in text, and tomorrow it can be hacked. So customer behavior is known to the hackers. So now security service providers or banks or who is providing services to customers, that security should be invisible. Right? Like Abhijit was talking about adaptive security. Right? So if I am doing transaction today at Borivali and all of a sudden my transaction is coming from some other location or some other IP. So customer behavior is changing to put on a adaptive authentication, and now this adaptive authentication, suppose I have conflict as a customer, right? I do not need it. I need it, and moreover, I need it with the help of my face or biometric. So so your a combination of open AI, open data with a digital identity will play major role.
Yeah.
So I think in a nutshell, what I want to say,
Yeah.
consolidation, platformification, and more people coming together, right, on a same chain or a same platform will boost that business model. So we'll discuss that further on how other technologies will play into that role. But I
Yeah.
think life is so beautiful here onwards for bankers or for consumers. We are not seen, as Abhijit and others also said, the banking we I used to do, right, in a way back in 2000 with my father used to send me to the branch and take out the money, and I happily used to go there waiting for that my
Hello.
token number and come back, and it is 3 to 4 years, 3 to 4 hours of exercise, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
today, my next generation, if I narrate this story, they will say, I think this is a very good story. I think, but we don't want to become that story. So I think these are initial thoughts from my end. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
Prasanna,
so much.
just on that, just a point, just one question that came through. I just want, it's a very allied question, so I thought I'll ask you. We talked about this profiling of individuals, right? So the AI utilization, how will it fulfill the privacy law compliance?
Yeah, that's what I said now. While see how privacy or how data, so we as a bank see it always in a glass houses, right? And how to protect those glass houses with a regulation, with a security strength and guidelines. So I think, say example, 5 6 years before, in if you ask any of those banks, how many people were there in IT security or how many tools they used to adopt in IT security, and today it's a vast difference, right? It's a vast difference. Like today, I have a CISO along with several other team members who are taking care of security day and night. Any application goes into production, it goes under a very good cycle of testing, penetration, or a VAPT. And moreover, with adaptive authentication, SOC in come into picture, and many other tools, we do this assessment, or rather, it's a continuous assessment, continuous monitoring. So I think, uh, and coming back, data security with when we are providing your APIs to startups or fintechs. So we take care of a right security guidelines before getting into go live, do end-to-end assessment, and then we go live. But at the same time, this is what I was saying, right? Tomorrow, if any transaction or data being utilized by fintech today, how do I really govern it, right? So I think technologies like blockchain will come into picture and say the data which was available at fintech this moment it is intact. Even if that fintech says no, I have not utilized your Aadhaar details and this and that, he can verbally say anything. But at a technology level, we can always deep dive and audit how the data is being tampered or not tampered. So I think that's why open banking, open data, along with the blockchain will be a right future here onwards. Not in banking, but apart from banking, many organizations started adopting it, and sooner or the later, it should be part of our journey.
Okay, got it. So just want to, I know we talked about all the specific experience part here. So let's just want to ask broadly, if let's say if you've got many of our listeners who are looking at it saying, look, what is this next level of opportunities that's going to come by? Okay. In this space, if there are, there's sure a lot of startups listening in, there are a lot of companies that are providing financial services that are listening in. So, Dr. Rima, if I start with you on a broad level, what do you see are like the big opportunities that you see with regards to the space that's based on the research that you've been doing from NASSCOM's perspective?
Sure. So I'd first like to touch upon some of the points that Mr. Golok, Abhijit, and Mr. Prasanna pointed out, and those were actually very insightful discussions. And like Abhijit pointed out, that it would be more so the audience is changing. It's not the same people that are now banking. It's more of Gen Z. It's more of the millennials that are getting into using these online platforms, banks, insurance providers, and their requirements are completely different. So what would have been a priority for let's say banks 5 years prior to now was to kind of digitize and get their things online, move from traditional to digital banking. But now with the change in the kind of people who are using the services, it's more on customer centricity, what they want. Like Abhijit pointed out, that want the right product at the right time, and they don't want to even look for it. So I think strong customer profiling is required. And like Mr. Prasanna touched upon the point of data security. So more than data security, it's also like Mr. Golok mentioned, AI is data hungry. We need a lot to create those customer personas, which are very important to provide real-time insights and make the experience seamless for customers. So now there are two schools of thoughts. The Gen Z or the millennials, they want the services in a very personalized manner at the right time, perfectly customized and personalized for them. And on the same side, they are also very reluctant and very particular about the kind of data they share because of the awareness, because of the usage of data at multiple touch points. And that's something that I think might be a point of concern at some point, given the current privacy laws and concerns. I think those, like Mr. Prasanna mentioned, are evolving and will evolve. So security is not a concern, but privacy, yes, maybe a lot of people might not be wanting to share their data, and lesser the data, the lesser the accuracy of those customer profiles will be. So I think people are also in a dilemma. The customers are also in a dilemma. They want the customized and the personalized service, but at the same time, they're also very concerned about where and how their data is being used. So that is one point that I wanted to touch upon. And when it comes to the type of opportunities, like Mr. Prasanna mentioned, and we were talking about customer experience. It's not just the customer facing roles or enhancing the experience of the beneficiaries of these services, but also at the end of the banks and the financial services. So it's at three levels. It's at the front end, it's at the back end, and it's at the central level. So if we talk about the front end, there are like conversational bots, agents who can do now much more meaningful conversations, persona based interactions. There's also social media monitoring and integration, because now social media has become a key part of everybody's life, and especially the millennials, who are a broad base of our customer matching. Product customer matching is another area. Then when we come to the central area, where we also need to ensure aspects of fraud detection, integrated operations, compliance monitoring, risk profile assessment. So while giving loans, now there are apps, and these banks and insurance companies also have a lot of AI at their end, wherein they can actually customers before actually getting to have that discussion with them, and they have all the data ready. And similarly, if we come to the back end, then there are also market and competition insights that can play a big role. There is proactive risk modeling, performance and response time enhancement, like Mr. Prasanna mentioned, and Mr. Golok also pointed out in terms of the passport seva services, that it's not just the customer who's benefiting, but the employee as well, because they're saving on a lot of time. So I think there's a huge potential in terms of all of these three layers: front end, the central, and the back end layer. And in terms of the top areas that we figured out in terms of the categorize into three broad areas of where AI is being implemented in BFSI, especially from an India scenario. It's customer experience, it's operational efficiency enhancement, and it's proactive risk management. I think we've beautifully touched upon all three of them. And we, in fact, what we did as a part of the research was to create a periodic table of all the opportunities across these three key areas and the value chain, and some of the high intensity use cases that we see right now and going in the future as well. In terms of, if we talk about sales and marketing, it's a personalized marketing. I think we beautifully touched on that. If we talk about customer management, it's customer service, and like Mr. Prasanna mentioned, video KYC, which will become a great opportunity area. Biometric audio, video, sensor data enhancement. And like he mentioned, that 5 years down the lane, it would be more of our Alexas and Siris talking to the banks directly, and maybe not even us. So how do we get that sorted? Because right now they can create a customer profile of, let's say, Abhijit and a Rima, but they may not be able to differentiate between an Alexa operated by Rima or maybe an Alexa operated by Abhijit. So, I mean, there would be a whole new kind of an interplay that will happen between connected devices, the humans in the loop who are at the end of the customer service delivery. And in terms of core transactions also, if we talk about insurance claims investigation, a great use case. Now you don't have to always call a surveyor. You can just click pictures and give a video. Right now it may not be that prevalent that like humans would be actually going through all of those video, but in the near future it would be AI who would be doing it and would be sending you alerts. Okay, this much amount of your insurance can be claimed. And similarly, fraud detection and credit risk assessment, very great AI use cases in risk and compliance space. So I think we've beautifully touched upon all the areas. What I feel now is that the enterprises that are ahead in this journey in the whole BFSI sector are able to get their hands on at different AI use cases across the value chain. But when it comes to the smaller players like the SMBs, the smaller insurance companies, or the smaller banks who are still not digitized, where should they start their journey from? How do they actually evaluate in terms of what is it that we should invest in? Because if they are to implement AI either in-house or to get a partner to do it, they need to think of certain things before getting into a solution. They need to get their data ready, their tech stack ready, their risk and regulation compliances ready. They need to evaluate all of those things, and at the same time they also need to see where is the business impact for them, where is that value creation. So I would like to touch upon more on this, but would like to hear more panelists on that aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Rima. So I don't know if any of you are still following the Donald Trump and story. It's getting very close. It's getting very close. I can tell you that much. So I wish we had AI to predict this also in the future. I think we're getting there slowly. So another point of credit and risk that you talked about, I just want to bring in Golakji. Just a lot of the security aspects that is being talked about right now. Obviously, I mean, you know, from a government standpoint, from what you're looking at, from your excellent work that you've been doing on from as a CTO, do you think the security posture requires relook and realignment? Pandemic, post-pandemic, how do you think we need to realign?
No, absolutely. I think this is a very question on the dot, James. And some of the points on the security and privacy, Dr. Rima, Prasanna, and Abhijit has touched upon. But let me give a kind of a little more into insight into the security and privacy side of it, especially when the pandemic has hit us and the new normal has hit us. I typically find why we need to relook and rethink our security posture because of two, three factors. No, because of the pandemic. One is mostly now you can see the environment has become a kind of a hybrid. It has become physical plus digital. It has become on premises plus off premises. It has also become kind of a how do you segregate between your sovereign and non-sovereign that we call in government, no, sovereign data and non-sovereign data, critical data and non-critical data. So there will be a really we had to rethink and relook into our entire security posture, right from as I said, from your workload to workforce to workspace to content and context. So that is one area. The second very important area, which because of the new pandemic and the post-pandemic era also, what personally I feel and the way we are thinking within the public sector and government is, no, see the point here, which probably Prasanna and Rima tried to touch upon is, when you see the security posture at large, I generally say that one has to understand, right from your conceptualization state, that is the way you strategize, the way you are planning, and then from there on, I mean, right from strategy and planning stage, then to design stage, then execution and implementation stage, and then at the operationalized stage. So security will not go kind of a beat and pieces. It has to be holistic look, right from design strategy to the implementation and operationalization. That is one area we have to think through. The second aspect of the security, where I always advocated wherever I speak or whatever discussion we do within our government setup, saying that I must understand the security, kind of a visibility, I say. Now, when I say security visibility, meaning to say that, do I really understand my data points? Now, when I say data points, do I again really understand right from I'm doing the ingestion of the data till I'm taking insights of it? Meaning to say that, do I really understand who is the principal owner of the data? We are talking about security, right? So I must understand who is the owner of the data. Is that I, as a ministry, or you as a private organization, you only become the custodian of the data, right? While that I am collecting the data and governing that data, do I really understand the ecosystem at large, where all I am, distributing and sharing, or kind of a using this data sets which I am collecting from the principal owner of the data? Do I also understand how is the data I am storing at rest, right? And to understand that, again, as I said, you need to have a complete kind of a good data governance model if you want to handle the security and privacy issue. Now, when I say good data governance model, typically four things comes into my mind. The first and foremost thing is, do I really understand the people or the actors who are playing a role in this entire ecosystem, whether it is a project, whether it is a scheme, whether it is a bank, whether it is a public sector or the private sector? Do I really understand the people and the actors playing the role? The second very important thing to understand on the data governance model is the tools and technologies I deploy. I think Mr. Prasanna has touched upon that, saying that really what kind of tools and technologies I am deploying to control these actors, whether it is my employees, whether I tell them the very important but very notorious fellow, the administrators, and I tell them the crude activities. Do I really understand my crude activities? Create, read, delete, update kind of exercise. Do I really understand them? Do I really control them? Right? So do I really understand the first quarter? I said people and technology. The second quarter also, if I need to define a good data governance model, is I also understand the execution model. What kind of execution model I have adapted? Tomorrow we are going towards a blockchain kind of environment. Today we are more or less into cloud kind of a stage, right? And on top of that, the kind of business model you have innovated. For an example, I have a business model which I have innovated as PPP partnership model. Now, in a PPP partnership model, I also must know what is my sovereign data and what is my non-sovereign data. Do I really have access of the sovereign data to my PPP partner? If that is, then there is a risk. No, you are already entering into a risk. So apart from having the execution model, you also need to identify your business model. Which business model? And this is very important, let me tell you, when you are developing your business model and execution model. The third thing is also very important, that I typically say rules of engagement. What kind of rules, or do you really understand your rules of engagement? Means the business processes at large, including the compliance and regulations. If you understand that, then probably again you can define your security. In any case, you can define, but the privacy side of it. And why I'm focusing on the privacy most of the time, whether it is a bank or whether it is a government sector, let me be very frank, saying that merely collecting or taking a consent while you are collecting the data from the citizens at large or customer at large, it means nothing, let me tell you, at this stage. Because most of the time, the data being collected and merely taking a consent from the citizen or the customer, that poor chap is nowhere aware of what is that you are going to do with that data on a later stage, because most of the data, the value of the data itself in its secondary use. And I probably request no, Dr. Rima and team who are doing the research on these areas, they must focus on the user of the data, the agency who is using the data, how you make that agency or the user responsible, not the principal owner. That principal owner of the data is even not aware of what you are using with that data when it comes to privacy and security concerns, right? So that is the third area we must understand what is our rules of engagement. And the last is definitely, as I said, how do you handle data at rest and during transmission and transactions. I mean, what kind of, whether you are encrypting, masking, non-masking, those tools and technology, which anyway there. The last area, no, which I'd again like to touch upon, saying that when we are, no, you just imagine a scenario where the kind of from the silo environment to we move ahead towards a consolidated environment, then to automation, and now into collaboration stage. Now we are at a collaboration stage. And why I'm saying we are at a collaboration stage, if you see the government side of it, we are now coming out with a platform, the platform which is available for all. For an example, let me give you an example of DigiLocker. Now DigiLocker as a platform, it is not meant for me only. It is meant for Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Home, any ministry, any state department, even banks and other customers can use the facility of DigiLocker. But this kind of platform where you are creating a collaborative platform where at large, no, customer at large, it doesn't matter a public sector or private sector, or for an example, GSTN as a platform or Aadhaar as a platform. So various platforms are coming within the government setup, and these platforms will be leveraged at large when delivering schemes, benefits, services, no, to citizen and customer at large. So while we will be leveraging these platforms at large to the masses as a whole, how do we look into security and privacy concerns? How do we look when we are moving into this kind of emerging technology era, whether it is a cloud computing, whether it is a kind of a blockchain kind of a platform, whether it is a kind of a RPA and robotics kind of a technology, whether it is kind of a IoT kind of a platform, big data kind of a platform. And as I said earlier, no, these technologies, whether no, I tell them bark, no, all those seven bark when I say blockchain, big data, artificial intelligence, R is your RPA, robotic process analytics, then CCC, that we call chatbot, cloud computing, and your cyber security. All these seven emerging technology, you will see that they will work in conjunction. They individualistic, they will not have its own benefit. For an example, I think Prasanna was saying that AI with RPA will deal with my all rule-based process, rule-based no, kind of a other engines, no, AI with RPA. AI with big data can take care of my all kind of insights, whether it is from a structured source or it is a unstructured source, right? AI with chatbot or advanced bot, it will take care of my all customer engagement and customer experience. So we have to look in a not only in terms of various actors playing the role in a collaborative way, but also technology being deployed also should be used on a collaborative and constructive mode. And if that is the scenario we are emerging, this is no, very important to see that ultimately the data being no, collected, data being harnessed, data being leveraged, not only the security postures, but also the privacy concerns. How do we address it holistically? When I say holistically, means right from principal owner of the data to protection of your personal data to finally leveraging and harnessing for a third party use. right? So that is the way things are going to emerge, and that is the way I again personally feel, whether it is a government sector or industry or academia or kind of a research organizer like Dr. Rima is working on the research side of it. We all have to collaboratively and jointly work to achieve the kind of a outcome and efficacy and efficiency kind of a thing
Thank
we are
you.
looking for. So that's
Thank
how
you.
it is, James, I find.
Thank you, Golakji. So, I mean, Abhijit, both questions to Abhijit and to Prasanna. I mean, we cannot take you one. Cybersecurity, I mean, I know it's one of the key elements that we have been speaking about with regards to all of this. So, I know both of you are pretty passionate about this topic. So, with this instance of massive data usage and so much of collaboration, many different players coming together, I mean, how do you prevent or how do you kind of minimize the cybersecurity risks for organizations?
There are multiple ways. See, basically, it is not just about data. It is also about the processes that you lay out for your internal people and internal team. Most of the places where we have seen the fraud happening, it is not because of the intelligence which was outside the organization, but it was because of some insider as well. I mean, in most 90% of the cases, it is the insider who has let out some information, and then someone has kind of utilized that information and used it to its benefit. Now,
Okay.
so protection of that internal data, I mean, data not going out of the organization, any sensitive data not going out of your premise, I think that's really becoming very important. Now, when I say data not going out of your information, there are multiple categories of data. There is a employee data, there is a customer data, there is a privileged data. So privileged data is all about your passwords, your administration rights, your privilege management systems, your access management systems. I mean, if someone is able to really get into that place in your organization, then just look at the kind of risk it poses to the organization. So one is the categories of this data and increasing a level of sensitivity when it comes to the privilege related data. Second is where this data sits as of today. Is this data completely on premise? No, it is not. I mean, you look at the integrations and the business models that are emerging with the fintechs. I mean, banks are closely collaborating with fintechs. For example, banks on Cubes or Lendigo or many of these new fintechs which are kind of doing their integration with the banks. Now, bank is owning the data with regards to customers, but at the same time, when there is a transaction, this data is passed on through these fintech to the end consumer. So protecting the data on an intermediate basis, that the data is not seen by the intermediary, but it is being directly seen by the end consumers. Even that becomes important. So that is one aspect of collaboration and integration to create different business models of the data that passes across multiple parties is being controlled and protected. Third element is your infrastructure itself is a hybrid infrastructure as of date. Not all the boxes that you have, all the servers that you have are on your premise. It's some of them are on cloud, some of them are out here. Now, if there is a sensitive data sitting on cloud, how is that protected? What are the mechanism? Of course, we had a regulation where banks were not allowed to use the cloud unless and until the cloud provider had their systems or had their servers in the bounds of India. I mean, so apparently going forward, that regulation might get changed. There might be some changes made to the data which is residing either inside the country or outside the country. That is a different thing. But the point is the data is not residing at one place. So whatever data is residing in my bounds, in my premise, that can be solidified, that can be secured. But the data which is not sitting in my premise is sitting in the cloud. We need to really make sure that we have the right providers. And nowadays it is not just Azure or Amazons of the world, but there are a lot of intermediate players who are providing these services to the organizations. So even they have some rights when they are doing the support and maintenance of the cloud environment. So it's not just the third party, but it's tri-party agreement between the provider, between the cloud provider, and between the consumer. So I think the digital landscape is become very complicated to kind of protect the data. So right controls for the internal on-premise servers, right controls for the data that is sitting outside. And I think Golak mentioned very interestingly about the data at rest and data in transit. I mean, the care has to be taken that data in transit is also protected while it traverses through multiple parties and finally reaches the end consumers. So I think that is something which I would kind of touch upon.
Uh, Prasanna, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Abhijit has really nicely covered all the technical as well as behavioral or human behavioral aspect. Very, very important. Like most of these fraud do happen because of some negligence or some by mistake or by intentional clicking on some some email which is come to you from MD's email address at the rate some other domain, right? So I think this awareness cycle is very, very important. Why I said cycle, it has to be continuous exercise at organizations level. You should and awareness around these all these precautions. You should not use USB drives or should not click those emails or should not allow somebody to enter in the physical premise. So I think it's very, very important. A human angle is very, very important in this aspect. I do agree with Abhijit. Other angle to look at the technical aspect, right? So where now every bank is regulated by regulated by regulators, and they have said, please implement FRM, right? Fraud risk management tool. It is a mandate now. Please implement RSA or please rather I would say please implement adaptive authentication. So regulator is also taking care of these things to implement which tools. Now there are some guidelines. For example, recently regulator said that for cooperative banks, they should have their CISOs, right? Their own. It was never. It was shared kind of a CISO they used to operate on, right? Like that, like other banks. Now cooperative bank will also will have those strengthened guidelines. So guidelines are playing major role, and relevant regular audits, either from regulator or third party audits, and submission of those data to the regulators is keeping banks always on toes. So that's a process side which Abhijit was talking about. How do we really take care of this process? And so now see, traditionally we are doing all this like awareness and the process and implementation of these tools, and at the same time government is going to come up with some act, data protection act, and so on. And on a preventive or corrective action, we have a cyber sales and cyber police who takes care of these complaints for a customer, right? Or even at a cloud level, how to localization. So I think these are all things are there, right? But when actual fraud happens, right? Say example, we have seen Cosmos Bank or any other bank. When actual fraud happens, it takes lot of time to come up with the RC and come up with a report because of this reason. Visually, you may see ki because of some malware in a switch, it is being happened. But typically, to arrive a conclusion, it takes time as well as takes some cost. So I think it's good to have a strengthened guidelines and the controls in the place everywhere at a human and this level. And other angle, apart from when the fraud happens, like, it takes a lot of time. Adoption or a learning or a teaching to the top management. Okay, why? Because say today's CISO will go to the board and say, I require 2 crores of budget or 3 crores. It takes a lot of time for him for a generalized banks, not typical banks, right? It takes it, that awareness is yet to come at a board level. Although bank like us and some of the top banks, they know importance of security. If I am investing a lot on my digital transformation journey, similar quantum I have to really invest on my security also. That's something known to very few banks, and it has to go everywhere. One more angle I would like to touch upon, that security and design of your applications, right, should go hand in hand. Say example, I am adopting a second factor authentication just because RBI said from tomorrow onward there should be an SMS to will go to the end user, and to mitigate that, now we have many more other regulations, right? SMS should not be read, right? So that is wherein Google has stopped recently 1 year back. But that was a very liberty for everybody, right? Or
SMS are now fraudulent, right? So instead of that OTP SMS, at the same time, people are watching at the same time when SMS will go, I will also send another SMS with a similar kind of a text, and people will click on that link and will snatch all the data. So I think when we are coming with some guideline or some regulation, we need to see the potential impact of that, right? So I think here onwards, more and more inclination will go on to your behavioral or behavioral biometrics or invisible security aspects. I am there, I am entering bank branch, my authentication should happen automatically. I am in front of my mobile, I have given my consent of my facial or any other way, it should happen automatically. I think that level of a second or a third factor of authentication or I would say multi-factor authentication mechanisms, although adaptive authentication are there, but it has to go in everywhere, in all the aspects. So today I am using my Aadhaar ID everywhere, right? So, and the data could be available everywhere, or today I might be using PAN at times. So there are various form factors to do authentication today in India. So I think some unique identity has to come in India, wherein I'll say, so there are risks also around that, but we will do away to many more other risk current channel. There are risks that if that identity goes, everything goes. But if it is very robust and secure and blockchain based, I think there is a little chance to really do some of the frauds. Coming back, I think that's a generalization we have to bring on. Today, our digital identity is stored somewhere. It is stored in Aadhaar, but tomorrow digital identity should be with me. Wherever I'm going, my digital identity, I should carry that identity. It should not be stored in Aadhaar database or some PAN database, something. I think that kind of a thought process has to come in when we are designing our softwares or our platforms. What we had designed earlier, based upon that, we are coming up with some regulations. We are not coming up with some disruptive kind of a mechanism. From there on, your security becomes invisible. You are lowering your different number of tools which you have to implement in the bank. Because what happens, you come up with some tool to manage that tool, there is another tool, right? So it's a game, right? It's on it. So there has to be some parallel thought process. How do you really come out of all these things and have a right security across all type of layers? Yeah.
Sure. We've got 20 more minutes to wrap up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all a brief question to answer. I'll ask you to take like two minutes to answer this question. And then I will read out some of the questions that we have received from the audience, and then we'll wrap up. So according to you, a lot of people who are listening in, so the right approach to AI adoption for BFSI enterprises. I know there are many small, medium sizes, large sizes. So what, according to you, would be your top advice to them if they have to say, look, we are going to adopt AI in our BFSI enterprise?
So is this for me?
Yes, Abhijit, you can take it, but I think I want
so I think the important point to hear, I think Prasanna also touched upon a lot of good points. And what I would like to suggest here is, first and the foremost, generally people and a lot of organizations will keep on speaking the buzzwords, AI, ML. They would do some use case, small use case, and it might or might not really generate the value that it is supposed to generate. Okay, and but at the same time they will make a lot of marketing out of it, that okay, we have done a AI, we have done an ML use case. Apparently the first and the fundamental block is to have the right data in place, the data factory that needs to be in place to kind of really ensure that your AI and ML capabilities are leveraging the right data. Now when it comes to data, there are multiple points that I think Golak also mentioned with regards to structured and unstructured data, and how it has to be really brought into one lake. So typically many organizations started with the big data, then came the scenario of data lake, and now we are moving on to data mesh. But what is the right structure for a particular organization is based on the digital maturity that particular organization has. For some organization, they might really do with a big data setup, a Hadoop setup. But for some, where there are multiple data sources, they might really go with the data mesh kind of a structure, where they have a requirement of real-time data spooling from the applications directory and they are have the capability of defining the data models for every application, and that application will keep on publishing that data model, which can be consumed by the end consumers of that application. It can be the end consumer in person, it can be end consumer as a system, or it can be a end consumer which will be a data lake itself. So a data lake can be a consumer of one more data model. So you can go into a lot of complexities when you try to define the data structure for your organization, but the important and the fundamental part is you define it. And the definition of this data structure should be aligned to the roadmap that this organization has with regards to the use cases that they are going to take up, maybe in next 6 months, in next 1 year, and next 3 years. Based on that, they will be in a position to define the kind of maturity that their data lake or data mesh should be having. I think once they have these fundamental blocks, then comes your identification of the use cases and identification of what you really want to do. Are you directly going to do assisted or non-assisted kind of machine learning? What kind of algorithms you are going to use? Are you going to use, or of course, what kind of technologies you are going to use specifically for taking your decisions? Just touching upon a credit scenario where a lot of lenders are trying to do the credit scoring based on algorithms that they are defined. Now, there is a lot of data that is coming from outside. There is a data which is coming from GST provider. There is a data that is coming from your Aadhaar. There is the data that is coming from the bank statement analyzers. And so you need some staging environment to store that all of that data, and on top of that you will generate your own scores. There will be data, video data, that will come from the your personal discussions that you are going to have with the customer, and based on that video recording you will analyze his sentiment, that whether this person is really worthy of credit or not. And so all these techniques can be applied to kind of come up with some credit scores. Now if you look at this particular use case, there are there is a video data, there is a data which is coming from third party, there is a data which is coming from your bureaus. So now all this data is going to be in multiple formats. Now if you pick up the use case, you immediately come to a consensus that, okay, what kind of data structure I need here. And so that is the reason I'm telling that the complexity of the data structure is going to depend on what kind of roadmap you have for your AI and ML use cases. So I think defining that, and based on that definition, you build your foundational blocks. That really becomes very important.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so James, I think Abhijit has very well touched upon some of the points, but I think approach to AI should not be, in my view, a shortcut approach. It should be a learning curve. There must be a learning curve. There must be a kind of a maturity curve. When I say learning curve, maturity curve means you have to graduate from, let's say you are at a silo stage. First, you move from your silos to consolidation and then to automation stage, and then probably try to leverage this kind of a emerging technology, whether it is AI, whether it is big data, whether it is analytics. Because see, unless you have those learning curves, those maturity curves in terms of not only as a cultural shift within your own organization, but also a stakeholder at large and customer and users at large. So that is one very important area when you are approaching to AI. The second important aspect of AI is you must understand, as I said, your data sets, your data points well, whether it is your a confidential data, whether it is your fiduciary data, whether it is your public data, whether it is your configurable data, and also the source of the data, whether the data source is a structured source, the data source is a unstructured source. And while I am saying so, the meaning to say that do you really understand the veracity of the data? If there is a noise in the data, if there are data veracity available in the data sets, believe me, the potential use of AI will go somewhere else. You will land somewhere else. So you must understand the noise in the data sets available. You also must understand the veracity of the data, very important. And the last thing is, as I said, when you are approaching to adopt this kind of a futuristic and emerging technology, must take a collaborative approach. Collaborative approach, when I say not only within your own organization, but also among your stakeholders, dependencies, regulators, compliance. So all together you have to see holistically. So these 3 points I wanted to put forward.
Lovely. Prasanna?
Yeah, I think a good point from our friends. See, I think so far what we were doing traditional banking, right? As I earlier said, and the banking has changed since 2014-15, at least in India. Banking has changed with the adoption of UPI, BBPS, or various other platforms came into banks' life. And even banks have started adopting API banking or open banking and RPAs and so on. So earlier, the way I had a core banking, which is a traditional flat account based systems. So now I need some additional flavors to that, right? So I will treat it as a digital core banking. And this digital core banking will be there at least there for next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, unless banking goes beyond banks or some other regulation comes like crypto banks or any other banking, right? Wherein it will be like some other kind of a banking will certainly see by 2030. But till that time, I think my inclination toward customer satisfaction, customer experience, I need to understand customer more better. So AI is a journey for us. It's not like one software which I launched and from there I will not take care of that, right? So it's like a journey as a culture changing at organization level. We have to have some people, skill set people. Earlier I had Finacle experts or some TCS based core banking experts or some web experts or some database experts. Similarly, at a bank level, I need these skill sets. I need some AI officer or some data officer who understands the data across all the ecosystems and collate that data, create a data lake, and use different kind of work with the different kind of business units and come up with the various use cases. That's his primary job or a KRA. So I need that specific unit at a bank level, at an organization to take care of data. So I think some of the banks already have a data officer. Similarly, I think no sooner after GDPR like will come, so we'll have a data officer plus AI officer to take care of this data. So people aspect is very, very important, and having right skilled people so that I carry this traditional journey to a digital core banking with AI into picture, because AI is going to be there everywhere. So I think Rima also narrated well that so back and middle office or front, we have to take care of all. So AI will touch upon all the front office and mid office. Sitting in a back will give a notification back to the front office on mobility or on IoT and so on, based upon understanding of data. Or AI will strengthen your APIs or automation which is in mid office. So your manual operations are getting converted into automation, robotic or AI again will come into use. So AI is gonna be there everywhere. So it's very, very important the way I had inclination of people skill set on a core banking. Similarly, I need these kind of a people, these kind of a tools, technologies, cloud first journey. So which is drastically will take your banking journey to the next level. So I think like Abhijit also will agree that orbit shifting, right? So your orbit will shifted if you adopt AI plus additional technologies in under one umbrella, under a digital unit or under a AI unit and so on. So I think every organization has understood, but there are few organizations started their journey.
Implementing it.
And who are either they do it themselves or collaborate with startup fintechs and work with them, or collaborate with some front end tools who has this data kind of a journey. I'll not be surprised as a platform that everything configuration parameterization will go in hand of customer. Customer will define his rules on his mobile phone. I want this much data and this much data only available on his mobile phone, right? Data is not at all available in my data lake or anywhere. Everything happens on mobile phone and it is all secured, and customer is owning that data. And customer is writing those rules, which is user-friendly user experience, right? We never thought of, when I was doing traditional banking, visiting bank branch and then that I will go on some gadget and click on this button and put OTP. You can't imagine what will happen in the next 5 years. So maybe in the next 5 years, everything comes in hand of a customer to do this all gamification. I want this pop-up in a augmented reality. I want some
kind of a guy standing in front of me as a hologram, and I'll keep on talking. So it is different way of a banking. I think as Golak has also rightly said, combination of technologies, 5G in backend, AI, blockchain in between your APIs on top of mobility or IoT, all the things has to be delivered as a package, but security has to be there on all the layers. So yeah, so these are my some final remarks. Security is a aspect which we have to take care. We have to carry. It's always with us. Yeah.
Sure. And Dr. Rima, any kind of have you published the research? Are you about to publish the research?
Yeah. So I think I completely agree with everybody's points. And what we've actually done is we spoke to a lot of Indian BFSI enterprises who were at different levels of their AI journey. Like Prasanna mentioned, that not all enterprises have started their AI journey. Some are at advanced stages, some are at very initial stages. And one common finding that we had, that they either start implementing their AI solution without thinking through the feasibility or the resultant benefits. What is it that they want to achieve and what is the feasibility? And by doing that, they either partially realize the value of AI or they hit a roadblock and then the entire momentum breaks. So I think as a first step, knowing the art of possible is very important. What all is possible and what can AI do for you is very critical. And as a second step, it is very important to prioritize the right use cases for you. So if we were to actually combine all of the points that everybody spoke about and basis our interactions with the industry, if we were to break this prioritization into a 2x2 matrix, one could be the business impact, the other could be the ease of implementation. And the business impact could be a function of, let's say, customer experience, which is where we talk about who the user of the technology would be, employee experience, which is the other side of the table, the operational efficiency, what can we improve, and reducing business risk, because with a sector like BFSI, there's a lot of risk involved. So if these were, let's say, the parameters that define the business impact function, and if we were to talk about ease of implementation, I would say technology complexity. I think everybody's touched upon it. Data complexity, very critical, very important. Ecosystem presence, because not all the players would be able to implement AI solutions themselves. And it is very important to have the right ecosystem presence for the use case that you want to implement, and regulatory risks. So if we were to like break down or prioritize the use cases basis a 2x2 matrix and say, okay, high business impact and high ease of implementation for me, considering the data complexity, the availability, tech presence, ecosystem presence, how will it improve my customer experience? How will it improve my employee experience? How will it reduce business risk? And how will it increase operational efficiency? Okay, these are the 5 things that I could do as quick wins. Then maybe if we go to the other side where we have high business impact, but the ease of implementation is not that high, these could be the big bets that I should focus on for the longer term. And on the other side where the business impact is not high, but it's easy, okay, these are some incremental things that I can do. And the last quadrant wherein, okay, we realized we were planning to do XYZ use case, but when we take into consideration all of these parameters, we see, okay, it's not maybe that high business impact. It will not give us those returns. And it is very complex also to implement. So maybe we should reconsider and maybe we should think about it later. So in the research report, what we've done is we've divided all of these use cases across the AI value, across the BFSI value chain into these categories, just as a starting step to help organizations identify where can they start, what can they do next. And this is definitely basis on what is available with them and what is their priority. So that kind of aligns with that. So I think I would say that could be a starting point, and then definitely every organization will have to customize and personalize and pull the right levers that are critical for them and embark on their AI journey. So I think I'd like to close with that.
Okay, so I would, on that note, we are just about 2 minutes on the clock. So I will probably bring this all to a close. I would like to thank the panelists, starting with Mr. Golok, Prasanna, Abhijit, and Dr. Rima. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Venkatesh, Shweta, and all the team from Messifinik. So it's been a wonderful experience. I've learned quite a lot today. I've learned about how there are a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I think the most important point is to have this vision, have this board level presence, looking at how are you actually go about implementing AI and just not taking it as a one-step process, but taking it as an entire journey. So I think with that, I will bring this all to a close, and thank you all for your participation, and have an excellent day ahead. And if you're watching the US elections very closely, it is still very tight and it's very close still going forward. And with that, I'll say bye bye to you all. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.